Have you ever found yourself stuck in the loop of over-explaining, over-texting, over-giving, thinking if you just tried harder, they'd finally get it? That your effort, your love, your consistency would make them realize what they had and come running back. Maybe you've replayed the story in your mind 1,000 times, thinking, if only I had said this, if only I had done that. But what if everything you believed about getting someone back was wrong? Let's be real. You were told that love means never giving up, that if someone pulls away, you need to fight harder, show them your value, remind them of the bond. But here's the twist no one talks about. The moment you stop chasing is the moment they start noticing. The second you choose silence over desperation, peace over panic, is the second you reclaim the one thing they can't resist: your energy. This isn't manipulation, this isn't a tactic, this is power, real, grounded, stoic power. Because there's something they don't expect. They don't expect you to stop explaining. They don't expect the warmth to turn cold. They don't expect your light to go out completely. And when it does, their world shifts, but not for the reasons you think. It's not about missing your texts or your voice. It's about the eerie, unfamiliar silence where your presence used to be. The space where you once filled their emotional gaps, now replaced by stillness. And that stillness is the storm. What if I told you that the most transformative thing you can do right now is nothing? That the real magic begins when you go completely silent, not out of spite, but out of strength. That's the part no one teaches us. It goes against everything we've been conditioned to believe about love, relationships, and closure. But here's the truth. Stoic relationships thrive on boundaries, not begging, on presence, not performance. When you truly understand this, everything changes. This article is not about tricks. It's not some cheap get your ex back gimmick. This is about shifting into a higher version of yourself, using silence, self-respect, and a deep sense of emotional detachment. And the best part, it's not just about them coming back, it's about you coming back to your center, your peace, your power. What you're about to discover is a roadmap not just for reclaiming lost love, but for reclaiming yourself. If you're tired of being the one who always cares more, who overgives, who waits, if you're ready to break the cycle, to flip the emotional script without saying a word, then don't blink, because what follows is a journey that doesn't just change how they see you, it changes how you see you. And yes, if you do this, truly do it, they will come back, but by the time they do, you might not even want them anymore. Are you ready for that kind of power? Good. Let's begin. 1. Disappear completely. The silent reset. There comes a moment when the most powerful thing you can do is vanish. Not with drama, not with noise, but with absolute, resolute silence. Imagine this. For weeks or months, maybe even years, you've been the anchor in the connection. You've reached out, checked in, sent the texts, asked the questions, forgiven the silence, overlooked the mixed signals, and made excuses for their inconsistency. You became the sun in their sky, rising without fail, burning even when they stopped noticing the light. And all the while your subconscious told you, if I just give more, love harder, stay longer, they'll see. But what if giving more only made them value it less? What if your presence became background noise, taken for granted, absorbed without appreciation? Here lies the Stoic realization. Not everyone who receives your warmth is capable of honoring it. And when they don't, the answer isn't to turn up the heat, it's to disappear altogether. This is where the real shift begins, the silent reset. You stop being available. You remove yourself from the equation. No breadcrumbs, no vague posts, no subtle signals. Just pure, unapologetic absence. It's uncomfortable at first because silence feels like failure in a culture obsessed with constant communication. But Stoicism teaches us that silence, when done, with intention is not surrender, it is sovereignty. You are not punishing them, you are protecting your peace. When you stop explaining yourself to someone who never truly listened, you step back into alignment with your own value. But let's be brutally honest here, this isn't easy. Your mind will beg you to check in, to scroll their stories, to text just one more time. It will convince you that you're being cold or cruel, that silence is immature. But what is more, immature, endlessly performing for someone who never claps or walking away without the need for validation. Disappearance is not about being vindictive. It's about understanding that emotional availability is a gift, and gifts should be given where they are received, not ignored. When you disappear, truly disappear, you create a gap that no one else can fill. And in that space, something strange happens. They start to feel what they never allowed themselves to feel while you were around. Your impact, the missed calls, the thoughtful check-ins, the emotional support, the quiet ways you held them together. Suddenly it's all gone. They reach for their phone out of habit, only to find stillness, that void. That's where the reprogramming begins. You've stopped feeding the fire, and now they're left in the cold. Not because you turned on them, but because you turned toward yourself. That's the part they never expected. You were so constant, so available, so dependable, they thought you'd never leave. They thought the sun would rise forever. But when it doesn't, when the light disappears, that's when the questions begin. Where did they go? Why haven't I heard from them? Did I mess this up? These thoughts are not planted by you. They bloom in your absence. That's the beauty of silence. It is stoic in nature, not performative, not manipulative. It is a boundary without needing to be spoken, and while you sit quietly, resisting the urge to reach out, they spiral, because now they're forced to sit with the truth. The emotional battery is gone, the safety net has been removed, the lighthouse has shut off its beam. And here's the twist. They may try to replace your energy. They may reach for distractions, dates, dopamine hits, but they will not find you in any of it. Because your energy wasn't just attention, it was presence, it was intimacy, it was security. And that kind of presence is rare. That's what you gave freely. That's what they lost. And now that you've pulled away, they will feel the lack, not the loud, messy kind, but the quiet, creeping kind. And when that silence starts to haunt them, you will begin to heal. Because in disappearing, you're not just resetting the relationship, you're resetting yourself. You begin to see who you were when you were always available. You start to notice how often you bent your boundaries, how often you over-explained, how often you tolerated confusion as if it were normal. And in that clarity, you reclaim your voice, not by using it, but by no longer offering it where it was never truly heard. There's a kind of dignity that grows in the void, the dignity of not chasing, the dignity of not needing to be right or understood, the dignity of no longer negotiating your worth. And this is where Stoicism breathes life into your process. Because Stoicism isn't about being emotionless, it's about emotional discipline. It's about choosing stillness over reaction, self-respect over validation, boundaries over attachment. So when you disappear, you're not running away. You're standing firm in your own reality, and the world around you shifts in response. People who were once distant begin to notice. Not because you reached out, but because you stopped, because you broke the rhythm, you exited the dance. And now they're left wondering what song they were dancing to all along. But here's where you need to be vigilant. The first few days, even weeks, are the hardest. The silence feels unnatural. You're tempted to post a story, to send a cryptic message, to remind them subtly that you exist. Don't. Every time you break your own silence, you teach them that your value is still negotiable, that your boundary is flexible, that they just need to wait it out. And that's not what you're here to teach. You are here to become the one who no longer waits. The one who no longer explains, the one who no longer pours into empty cups. When you disappear completely, you shift from being a constant to being a question. And that question will echo in their mind far louder than your voice ever could. But this is not about revenge. This is about elevation. You are not silencing yourself to punish them. You are silencing yourself to evolve. And the more fully you embrace that silence, the deeper your transformation becomes. You begin to hear your own thoughts again. You reconnect with your goals, your vision, your worth. You stop chasing closure, and instead you create clarity. Clarity that this chapter is about you, not about them. Clarity that love is not proven through effort alone, but through reciprocity. Clarity that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to walk away. And yes, if the connection was real, they will come back. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not the way you imagined, but they will. Feel the shift, they will sense the change, because silence breaks patterns, it interrupts emotional entitlement. And that interruption is often the only thing strong enough to create real reflection. But here's the kicker, by the time they come back, you won't be waiting. You'll be too far along in your own journey. You'll have reclaimed too much of yourself to settle for the version of love that once kept you small. And in that moment, you'll see that disappearing wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of becoming, of remembering who you were before the waiting, before the hoping, before the settling. You'll realize you were never too much. You were just too available. And now, as you walk in silence, your energy speaks louder than words. That's the Stoic truth. And that's why if you do this, if you disappear fully, cleanly, with no residue of bitterness, they will come back. Not to the version of you who stayed, but to the one who walked away with grace, the one who vanished, not to be missed, but to be transformed. This is Stoicism in action. This is the silent reset. This is your power. Own it. 2. Detach emotionally. Reclaim your inner power. Emotional detachment is not about becoming cold or shutting your heart off from the world. It's about choosing yourself when someone else has made it clear that they're not choosing you. It's the next level of silence. You've already disappeared physically, you've stepped back, but now it's time to take the deeper step, the internal one. Because even if you're silent on the outside, if your mind is still spinning stories about them, if your heart is still hoping, still wondering, still reaching out in the quiet of your own thoughts, then you haven't truly detached. They still have access to you, emotional access, and that's the access you must cut off if you want your power back. Ask yourself this: are you still replaying conversations in your head? Still imagining what you'll say if they come back? Still analyzing their every social media move, wondering if it's about you? That's emotional attachment. It's subtle, it's addictive, and it's draining you even when you're technically no contact. True detachment isn't about pretending not to care. It's about not needing their reaction to validate your next move. It's about reclaiming the energy you've been leaking into a space that gives you nothing in return. And that starts with one decision: to stop carrying them in your emotional body. When you detach, your aura changes. Your presence shifts. You no longer orbit around them. You begin to orbit around yourself, around your peace, your goals, your center. You become unpredictable. Not because you're playing games, but because their emotional grip has loosened. And people notice that, they feel that, because energy doesn't lie. They may not consciously understand why they're suddenly thinking about you more, dreaming about you, wondering what you're doing, but it's because the current that once fed them has stopped flowing. They can no longer feel your emotional signal. It's like you've unplugged their lifeline. That's when the panic sets in. That's when they start to question the dynamic. But by then, you've already crossed the threshold into peace. Let's be real, emotional detachment is hard, especially when your heart is still involved, when you still love them, when part of you hopes they'll wake up and realize what they had. But Stoicism teaches us this: hope is not a strategy, and love without reciprocation is not a reason to suffer. You can love someone and still let them go. You can love someone and still detach. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. Stoic relationships are not about control, they're about clarity. And clarity means knowing when your energy is being wasted. Your energy is sacred. And when you pour it into someone who doesn't hold it with care, you're betraying yourself. Detachment is the repair. It's the moment you stop asking, "Do they miss me?" and start asking, "Why am I still giving them so much of my energy?" Your attention is power. And every time you stalk their page, check their messages, reread old conversations, you're investing in an illusion. You're watering a seed that already withered. The power move? Withdraw completely. But don't confuse this with revenge. You're not doing this to get a reaction. You're doing it because your inner world deserves quiet. Detachment means you've stopped negotiating your self-worth based on someone else's presence or absence. You no longer react to silence with anxiety. You welcome it. You lean into it. Because you understand that silence isn't empty, it's where your strength is reborn. This is where Stoicism lives, in the moments you choose peace over performance. Detachment is the gateway to healing, because when you stop checking for their signal, you start tuning into your own. You start hearing your own voice again. You start feeling what you've been avoiding, the sadness, the grief, the loneliness. But you also start discovering what's been buried underneath all that noise, your self-worth. Detachment creates space, and in that space, the rebuilding begins. Not with a bang, not with fireworks, but with small, grounded choices. You wake up and reach for your journal instead of your phone. You meditate instead of replaying old texts. You take yourself out instead of waiting for someone else to invite you into life. That's the real glow-up. That's the part they don't see happening. While they think you're quiet because you're hurting, you're actually becoming. You're no longer fighting for a place in their life. You're building a life that doesn't need their presence. That's what Stoic relationships are built on: self-respect, sovereignty, emotional accountability. You don't seek closure. You are the closure. You don't chase apologies. You create distance. And in that distance, you find clarity. You stop blaming yourself. You stop rewriting the past. You stop needing them to understand. Because the truth is, the longer you stay emotionally attached to someone who isn't showing up, the more you bleed energy. And that energy could be going into your purpose, your projects, your peace. Detachment isn't abandonment, it's alignment. It's deciding that your nervous system no longer needs to be on edge for someone else's inconsistency. It's realizing that no contact is not about making them miss you. It's about making you matter again. It's about cutting the emotional umbilical cord that's been draining you. And when you do that, you'll feel the shift. You'll feel the mental weight lift. You'll notice how your mind starts to calm, how your focus returns, how your breath deepens, because you've reclaimed your power. That power isn't loud. It's not flashy. It's not performative. It's quiet, solid, grounded. It's you standing in your own presence, finally free from the illusion that you needed someone else to complete you. Stoicism isn't about being indifferent. It's about being deeply rooted in your own inner world. And when you master that, you become magnetic again, but not from need, from wholeness. You're no longer trying to get them back. You're no longer waiting. You're not even watching. You're building, quietly, consistently, with intention. You no longer flinch when their name comes up. You no longer check if they've viewed your story. You no longer replay that last conversation. Because your energy has shifted. You've detached not just from them, but from the version of yourself that tolerated emotional neglect. That's real power, that's real peace, and yes, they'll feel it. Even if they never admit it, even if they never say a word, they'll feel the disconnect, because you were once an emotional lifeline, a reliable light, and now that current is gone, they may try to test the waters. Like your post. View your story. Send a "hey" message, but that's not a real return. That's curiosity, that's ego, that's panic disguised as effort. Don't mistake it for genuine change. Emotional detachment teaches you to observe without absorbing, to notice without needing, to respond only when the energy is aligned, because the old you would have jumped at the chance to reconnect. The evolved you evaluate, you don't react. You discern. That's what Stoicism looks like in action. It's self-regulation. It's grace under pressure. It's knowing that not every message deserves your attention, that not every breadcrumb is a path worth following. You've learned to value your peace more than their presence, and that's when you win, because by the time they truly realize what they've lost, you're too far along, too grounded, too focused on your future to revisit a past that almost broke you. So sit with that silence. Let it work for you. Let it detox your mind. Let it rebuild your nervous system. And most importantly, let it anchor you in your own self-worth. Because emotional detachment isn't the end. It's the beginning of your real transformation. And if you feel that shift happening inside you right now, let it deepen. Don't resist it. Welcome it, breathe into it, and watch how everything around you begins to mirror that inner change. The people you attract, the situations you entertain, the standards you raise, all of it will evolve with you. That's the law of energy. That's the beauty of detachment. It's the reset button your soul has been waiting for. It's how you take your power back without saying a word. Now, if this part of the journey has spoken to something deep inside, if you feel yourself rising above the patterns that once kept you stuck, then this is your moment to lean in. Like this video, if you're claiming your power. Comment number 1 below if you're ready to let go emotionally and evolve. And if this message is resonating with you, subscribe right now, because what's coming next will take this strength and transform it into something unstoppable. Stay with me. We're only getting started. 3. Rebuild yourself in the dark. When the world goes quiet and no one is watching, that's when the real transformation begins. It's not on social media. It's not in someone's inbox. It's not in the conversations you replay in your head. It's in the dark, in solitude, in those long, restless nights where your mind wrestles with grief, confusion, and the truth that someone you loved walked away, and you're left holding the pieces of what once was. But here's the secret. The dark is not your enemy. It's your forge. It's where you sharpen your spirit, where you mold your resilience, where you stop performing for love and start becoming it. In the beginning, it hurts. Let's not pretend. Otherwise, you'll feel raw, you'll feel abandoned, you'll feel like maybe, just maybe, this pain will never go away. You'll check your phone out of habit. You'll reach for your past like it's a comfort blanket, even though it's full of holes. But every time you resist that urge, every time you choose not to reach out, not to react, not to reopen wounds that haven't healed, you win. You build discipline. You build self-trust. You begin to recognize that your worth was never in how well you could hold on to someone, but how well you could hold on to yourself when they left. Rebuilding in silence isn't glamorous. No one claps for you when you choose to journal instead of beg. No one celebrates when you sit in meditation instead of stalking their profile. But these are the quiet victories that shift your entire life. This is Stoicism in motion. Not fighting reality, not reacting emotionally, but embracing what is and using it as fuel for growth. You don't need their closure. You don't need their apology. What you need is to become so deeply rooted in who you are that no absence can shake your foundation. So start where it matters, your body. Not because you want to make them jealous, but because your body is your vessel, your home. Treat it with the respect you once gave them. Feed it well, move it with purpose, rest it when it's tired. There's something sacred about showing up for yourself in this way. It builds a new relationship, one where you are your own priority. From there, move into your mind. Read, learn, listen to things that expand your perspective. Not things that keep you stuck in the cycle of blame or hope, but teachings that push you forward. Philosophy, psychology, spirituality. Dive deep into the parts of yourself that were hidden beneath the noise of that relationship. Because when you stop needing to be distracted, you finally meet yourself again. And what a powerful reunion that is. You start to remember who you were before you tried to shrink yourself for love. Before you lowered your standards out of fear. Before you thought silence meant abandonment instead of evolution. And slowly, the energy begins to shift. You no longer flinch when their name pops up. You no longer fantasize about a reconciliation that would only recycle the same wounds. You begin to see the story clearly, not as a tragedy, but as a turning point. This is what Stoic relationships require. Not desperate clinging, but the courage to walk alone and build in private. It's not about revenge. It's not about proving them wrong. It's about proving to yourself that you can heal without their permission, that you don't need them to be sorry for you to be strong. Rebuilding in silence means understanding that validation is an inside job, that the best revenge is not found in a post or a glow-up they can see. It's found in a peace they can't access anymore. You're not angry, you're not bitter, you're just unavailable. That's a whole different kind of power. But here's the thing, don't expect it to be linear. Some days you'll feel invincible. Others, you'll feel like you're back at square one. That's okay. Healing is not a straight path, it's a spiral. And every time you circle back, you're hitting the wound with new strength, new insight, new tools. That's the progress. You learn how to sit with your triggers instead of reacting to them. You learn to question your patterns. You learn to hold space for your own tears without judging them. This is maturity. This is emotional leadership. And this is where you begin to understand that the relationship wasn't a failure. It was a mirror. It showed you where you were still seeking outside what only you could give yourself. It showed you where your boundaries were soft, where your fears led your decisions, where your self-worth depended on someone else's attention. And now you're taking all of that awareness and turning it into wisdom. You're rebuilding from the inside out, quietly, relentlessly, with intention. And here's what's beautiful. One day, you'll walk past the mirror and not recognize yourself, not because you've changed on the outside, but because your energy has shifted so deeply that your entire presence feels different, grounded, magnetic. You're not chasing anymore, you're not hoping, you're not waiting, you're choosing. And that shift, that's what they feel before they ever see you again. That's what makes them pause. That's what makes them wonder. Because they expected you to break. They expected you to chase. They expected the version of you who bent to keep them. But you rebuilt. You went into the shadows and forged a new version of yourself. Stronger, sharper, softer, but not naive. And now when they come back, and yes they will, it won't be to the same you. It will be to someone who no longer needs them. Someone who sees clearly. Someone who may not even want them anymore. That's the paradox. You do all of this inner work thinking maybe, just maybe, they'll return. And by the time they do, you realize they were never the reward. You were the version of you who stopped performing, who stopped pleading, who stopped begging for crumbs. That's who you were always meant to be. So let the silence stretch. Let it hold you. Let it build you. Don't rush it. Don't try to fill it with distractions. Let it teach you. Let it strip away every layer of false identity you built around being chosen. Because what you're building now, that doesn't need applause. It doesn't need validation. It's not for show. It's for you. And one day you'll thank the silence. You'll thank the heartbreak. You'll thank the absence because it brought you back to yourself. And that reunion is more sacred than any reconciliation. That's what Stoicism shows us, that the strongest people are not those who never fall, but those who rise without making noise. those who rebuild not to prove but to evolve, those who can sit in darkness without needing someone else to light the way. Because the light was never outside, it was always within. So stay in the silence, keep building, and remember, just because they don't see it doesn't mean it isn't real. The next version of you doesn't need to be posted. It needs to be lived, quietly, powerfully, stoically. 4. Let the silence speak for you. There's a difference between being quiet and being powerful. And the moment you stop trying to explain yourself to people who never listened in the first place is the moment your silence becomes your weapon. Not a weapon of war, but of self-respect, clarity and authority. Think about it. How many times have you repeated yourself, justified yourself, begged someone to understand your intentions, your heart, your loyalty, only to be met with indifference or arrogance? How many late nights did you lie awake wondering if maybe, just maybe, the right words could fix what was breaking? And how many times did you think, if I just say it the right way, maybe they'll see me, maybe they'll change, maybe they'll come back? But here's what you have to understand. On the deepest, most spiritual level, silence is not the absence of love. It is the consequence of disrespect. You didn't go quiet because you stopped caring. You went quiet because they stopped honoring your voice. They stopped showing up. They took your consistency as a given and your love as an entitlement. And when that happens, when your presence becomes background noise, the most stoic, self-respecting move you can make is to withdraw. Fully, not halfway, not with breadcrumbs, not with cryptic quotes or sad songs on your story, but with clean, purposeful detachment. This is what stoicism looks like in real time. You don't run, you don't chase, you stand still in your truth. You let your absence speak where your words were ignored. You stop performing, you stop reminding. You stop teaching people how to treat you with every message, every emoji, every late night just checking in. That version of you is gone now. They had their chance to appreciate it, and they didn't. So now your silence is your standard. And the echo it creates, that's not your burden. It's their mirror. Let them hear it. Let them feel it. Because silence is a mirror they were never prepared to face. It reflects back everything they refused to look at while you were there. Their selfishness, their distance, their inability to reciprocate. And that's why the silence hurts them more than your words ever could. Because now, they're alone. With themselves. No more distraction, no more comfort, no more emotional safety net. Just the emptiness where you used to be. And they'll try to fill it, believe that. With new conversations, new flings, new validations. But none of it will feel the same, because you weren't just company. You were energy, you were connection, you were the grounding force in their chaos. And now that you're gone, the world feels just a little bit colder. Not because you slammed the door, but because you stopped opening it. And that distinction, that's what changes everything. Most people think silence is passive, but that's a lie. Silence is active, it's intentional. It says, I'm no longer available for confusion. I'm no longer accessible to anyone who doesn't value clarity. I'm no longer a backup plan for people who treat me like an option. And let's be honest, silence is not easy. It takes everything in you not to break it, not to check in, not to soften your boundary when they finally notice you're gone. But every time you hold the line, you get stronger. You teach yourself that your peace is not negotiable. You teach them that your energy is not disposable. You let the silence do the teaching, not your emotions, because emotions will have you typing essays. Silence makes them write their own. And trust me, they will. They'll scroll through old messages, reread things you sent, replay the last conversation and wonder, when did they change? Why did they stop caring? Are they really done? These questions become louder in silence, and louder still in the moments when they reach out and you don't respond, because now they're unsure. And humans hate uncertainty. They don't know if you've moved on or if you're testing them. They don't know if they were really that replaceable or if you're just pretending, but the moment you explain it all, you kill the mystery. You hand them a map back into your life. Don't do that. Let the silence speak the truth. You had access. You lost it. The beauty of Stoic relationships is in that quiet power, your ability to walk away with grace, not noise. Because real power doesn't prove itself. It doesn't scream. It doesn't chase. It simply removes itself from what no longer feels right and watches everything realign. And if you're doing it right, your silence isn't about being bitter. It's about being better. It's not revenge. It's refinement. You are no longer seeking to be heard by people who never truly listened. You are no longer making room for people who showed up empty. You are no longer negotiating your value in conversations where your heart was never truly held. And this is where transformation lives, not in being louder, but in being absent. The kind of absence that speaks volumes, that shifts dynamics, that makes people feel what they couldn't hear. This is how you reclaim your narrative, not through confrontation, but through elevation. Because silence forces people to look inward. It removes the noise, it removes the excuses, it removes the easy out. And what remains is the truth of who they are, without your energy sustaining them. That truth is their burden, not yours. So don't check their profile. Don't break your boundary. Don't try to ease their discomfort. They earned that silence. Let them sit in it and let yourself rise within it, because as they sit wondering, you're not sitting at all. You're moving, you're growing, you're healing, you're rebuilding in peace. You're stepping into the next version of yourself, the version that doesn't react, the version that doesn't chase, the version that doesn't explain her worth to anyone who can't see it on their own. That's stoicism, that's self-leadership, and that's the path forward. Because one day, maybe tomorrow, maybe next year, they'll reach out. They'll try to start the conversation again. But by then, you'll be so deeply rooted in your new life that their words won't hit the same. Their messages won't shake you. Their "I miss you" won't land. Because silence has already done the work, it's already spoken, and what it said was this: you were never the one who left, you were the one who finally stopped waiting, and now you're free. And if you've made it this far and this message resonates with you, if you've felt the power of silence echo in your own life, then this is your moment to stand in it fully. Like this video, if you're choosing self-respect over reaction. Comment number 1 below if you're letting silence do the talking now. And make sure to subscribe, because the next chapter is where the real alchemy happens. The shift from silence to complete energetic detachment. Stay here. We're not done yet. 5. Control the story without saying a word. There is a certain kind of silence that is more deafening than any argument, more lasting than any explanation, and more haunting than any farewell. And that is the silence that controls the narrative without ever needing to utter a single word. This isn't about ghosting. This isn't about running away. This is about choosing not to perform, not to defend, not to fill in the blanks for someone who chose to walk away when you were offering them a front row seat to your life. The silence we're speaking about here isn't just about absence. It's about ownership. You stop speaking not because you don't have anything to say, but because you've said it all before. You've expressed, explained, hoped, begged, clarified, and waited. And at some point, that kind of repetition becomes self-abandonment. It becomes noise. But when you remove your voice from the equation, the story doesn't end. It just shifts, it twists, it unsettles, because now they're left with empty space. And empty space breeds questions, endless internal questions. The human mind is addicted to closure. It wants to make sense of things. It wants to put endings on unfinished chapters. And when it can't, it spirals. That spiral, that's the power of your silence. Not because you're manipulating them, not because you're playing some emotional chess game, but because when you stop broadcasting your story, they lose control of the narrative. And that, more than anything, forces them to sit with themselves. They start writing the story in their own mind. They begin projecting their insecurities onto the absence of your presence. Did you move on? Did you meet someone new? Are you just done for good? And every time they don't know, their ego takes another hit. Because silence introduces uncertainty, and uncertainty is what creates desire. That's what they don't teach you about relationships. It's not just love that keeps people connected, it's curiosity. When you were always explaining, you left nothing to wonder about. When you were always available, always transparent, always emotional, you became predictable. Predictability is comforting, but it kills tension. It kills desire, it kills the mystery. But now you've vanished. Now you don't react. Now you don't show your hand. And suddenly, the version of you they thought they knew is gone. In your silence, you have become unknowable again. And that's terrifying for someone who once had full access. This is what Stoic relationships reveal. Power doesn't come from noise. It comes from narrative control. And narrative control means you no longer explain. You no longer tell your side. You no longer justify your exit. You simply leave the story mid-sentence and let them write the rest. Not for revenge, but for recalibration. Because the moment you step out of their emotional stage, they have to start interpreting the silence. And interpretation is never objective. They fill in the blanks based on their guilt, their regret, their fantasy, their ego. That's the part you never see. But it's happening. And it only happens when you give no closure. You don't give the final monologue. You don't post your transformation like a movie trailer. You let your absence be the ending. A black screen, a cut to credits moment where they expected a resolution and got a void. And in that void, they start feeling what they didn't feel before. Consequence. Emotional consequence, not punishment. But the result of their actions or inactions. And that's when the narrative begins to unravel. Because they told themselves you'd always be there. They assumed you'd eventually reach out. They convinced themselves that your silence was temporary. But the longer you stay gone, the less certain they become. And in that space of not knowing, they suffer quietly, privately, desperately. And still, you say nothing because you know now what you didn't know before. Your silence is the most honest response you can give. It says everything their ears refuse to hear. It says, I deserved better. I gave you my attention, my effort, my presence, and you met it with ambivalence. So now I'm not angry, I'm not hurt, I'm just unavailable. And that, ironically, is what flips the dynamic. Because when you were emotionally invested, they had the control. But now you've taken the pen. You control the plotline, and the plotline is simple. You disappeared, and you let them sit in the wreckage of their own making. No voiceover, no footnotes, no summary, just silence. The kind of silence that shifts power dynamics. The kind of silence that repositions you from the heartbroken one to the one who healed without the apology. And when people see that, when they sense that your energy is no longer circling around them, they feel it, even if they pretend not to, even if they post pictures and act unfazed. Because pretending is easy, processing is hard, and silence forces processing. It forces reflection. It forces the very thing they avoided while you were in their life, accountability. But here's where you have to be disciplined. Don't ruin it. Don't try to guide the story from behind the curtain. Don't start posting things to make a point. Don't use social media to indirectly manage their perception. The moment you do that, the moment you try to control their view of your life, you lose the very power your silence created. Let them wonder, let them get it wrong, let them live with the questions, because the real narrative you're controlling is not the one they see, it's the one they feel. They feel the distance, they feel the difference, they feel the lack. of emotional access, and it unnerves them. And while they spiral in silence, you're not spiraling at all. You're building, you're growing. You're creating a reality that no longer includes them. Not because you're bitter, but because you're better. You don't need to tell anyone. You don't need to announce your progress. The right people will feel it. The wrong people will miss it. And those who walked away, they will realize in time that your silence wasn't the end. It was the beginning of your new story. One they are no longer part of. And that's the real consequence, not your anger, not your tears, not your final words, but your refusal to give them an epilogue. You've reclaimed your voice by using none at all. That's stoicism, that's discipline, that's emotional maturity. You've stopped chasing people who needed you to fall apart to feel important. You've stopped proving yourself to people who never earned that kind of devotion. You've stopped inviting people to a table where they only ever took and never poured back. And now your silence is your invitation to yourself, to your peace, to your purpose. You are no longer in the business of explaining your worth. You're in the business of living it quietly, powerfully, unapologetically. So let the silence continue to speak for you. Let it write the chapters they'll never read. Let it hold your boundaries. Let it protect your energy. Let it guide your healing. Because in the end, the strongest message you'll ever send is the one you never speak. It's the version of you they can't reach anymore, not because you hate them, but because you outgrew the story. That's the level. That's the shift. And that's the story you control without saying a single word. 6. Master the paradox. When you stop caring, they start chasing. There's a strange, counterintuitive truth that no one teaches you when you first learn about relationships. Something that contradicts everything romantic movies and emotional instincts have ever led you to believe. And that truth is this. The moment you stop caring, not pretending, but genuinely letting go, is the exact moment they start chasing. It defies logic at first, especially when your heart has been conditioned to believe that caring more, loving harder, showing up more consistently will somehow earn the love you crave. But the deeper you go into understanding human psychology, stoicism and energetic dynamics, the clearer it becomes. Overinvestment leads to imbalance, and imbalance creates emotional saturation, which dulls value, dulls desire, dulls urgency. When you are always available, always present, always expressive, they stop feeling the need to earn your attention. They stop asking questions because they already have the answers. You become known, predictable, safe, until one day, your caring becomes a background hum they don't even notice anymore. But the moment you stop caring, the energy shifts, the script flips. Suddenly, you're not reacting to their absence. You're not wondering why they haven't texted. You're not sitting in silence, waiting to be remembered. You're just gone, emotionally gone, energetically unplugged, no longer hoping, no longer needing, no longer bound to an outcome. And that, ironically, is when they feel your presence the most, when it's no longer feeding them. That's the paradox that flips everything, because caring too much created comfort for them, and comfort without effort kills curiosity. It makes your presence feel automatic. But when you pull that emotional frequency back, when your thoughts stop orbiting around them, when you finally recenter yourself, their emotional radar starts pinging. Why? Because their unconscious mind is wired to notice loss. Not loud, dramatic loss, but subtle, energetic withdrawal. They sense your detachment, and it disrupts their emotional equilibrium. They feel a shift, but they don't know what it is yet. They don't know if you're over them, if you're with someone else, if you're simply done. And that ambiguity, that's what creates the beginning of the chase. You didn't initiate it. You didn't manipulate it. You simply stopped caring, truly, fully, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. You understood, maybe for the first time, that all your overcaring wasn't love. It was fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of not being chosen, fear of being forgotten. And when you confront that fear and stop letting it drive your behavior, you reclaim a piece of yourself you'd been giving away far too cheaply. Stoic relationships are built on this foundation. Loving without attachment, giving without expectation, walking away without resentment. It's not coldness, it's emotional maturity. You care, but you don't cling. You love, but you don't lose yourself. You show up, but you don't chase. And when you finally reach that level of detachment, not because you're faking it, but because you've outgrown the need to be chosen, your entire presence changes. It becomes unpredictable, it becomes rare, and rarity is what people chase. Suddenly the emotional patterns they relied on are gone. You're not the one texting first anymore. You're not checking their story. You're not liking their posts. You've stopped feeding the fire. And in that darkness, they start to panic, not because they love you yet, but because the source of their emotional supply has vanished. They send a hey, they like a photo, they drop a comment, not because they're ready to come back properly, but because they need to know they still have access. That's the first stage of the chase, the test. But now you've learned you don't respond to breadcrumbs. You don't reward confusion with clarity. You don't give validation to vague effort, because the old you would have jumped at it. The old you would have taken it as a sign. The old you would have seen hope in a reaction. But you've outgrown hope as a strategy. You've stopped romanticizing effortlessness. You no longer see emotional breadcrumbs as signs from the universe. You see them as what they are. Fear responses, not love responses. Stoicism teaches you to observe without reacting, to feel without losing control, to stay grounded when your emotions try to trick you back into attachment. Because detachment is a daily practice. It's not a one-time decision. It's choosing every day to center your energy on your growth, not their presence. You stop waking up wondering how they feel about you and start waking up wondering how you feel about you. You set goals. You move your body. You refine your boundaries. You cultivate a version of yourself that no longer needs to be chased to feel worthy. And ironically, that's exactly what makes you magnetic again. Not for them, but for everyone. Because now your energy says, I am whole. I am enough. I am not available for confusion, inconsistency, or conditional effort. And that vibration is what pulls them back, not because you wanted them to come back, but because they no longer recognize you as the person they could ignore. You're not bitter, you're just busy. You're not angry, you're just aligned. You're not cold, you're just clear. And that kind of clarity is powerful. It's irresistible. It creates tension, and tension creates attraction. But here's the part you have to understand. By the time they truly start chasing, you won't be waiting. You'll be watching. You'll be evaluating. You'll be asking a different question. Do I even want this anymore? And that question, that's what sets you free. Because now you're not trapped in the fantasy of who they could be. You see them as they are. And more importantly, you see yourself clearly for the first time in a long time. You see what you tolerated, what you hoped for, what you ignored. And you begin to understand that the real gift wasn't getting them back. It was getting you back. You were never too much. You were just giving too much to someone who gave too little. And now you've become someone who gives to herself. But that's when the game changes. That's when your energy becomes so elevated that the version of them who left can no longer access you. You're not mean. You're not dismissive. You're just uninterested in reliving old cycles. And if they want to come back, they better bring a new version of themselves. One that matches your growth. One that honors your peace. One that contributes, not just consumes. Because you don't open your door to weak energy anymore. And that's when you master the paradox, not just understanding it intellectually, but living it, feeling it, being it. You stop performing, and the world notices. You stop overgiving, and your space becomes sacred. You stop trying to be chosen, and you start choosing. And guess what? You don't chase anymore. You attract, you don't wait. You evolve, you don't beg. You become. And if they come back, they better be ready for the storm of silence and strength that shaped you. Because you didn't wait in weakness, you rose in stillness. And that's the kind of power no one can take away from you again. If you felt this shift, if you're claiming this energy now, like this video, and comment number 1 below to mark the moment you stopped caring and started rising. Subscribe now, because the final chapter will take everything you've learned and show you how to stand your ground when they reach back out, and trust me, they will. But this time you'll hold the power. Stay with me. You've walked through the silence. You've reclaimed your energy. You've let go emotionally, rebuilt in the shadows, and stopped caring in a way that finally set you free. Now, you stand at the edge of the most powerful part of the journey. Not the moment they come back, but the moment you realize you might not even want them anymore, because everything you thought you needed from them, you've already given to yourself. The closure, the healing, the love, the recognition, it came. Not from their return, but from your evolution. And that's where Stoicism has silently guided you all along. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about playing games. It was about coming back to yourself. Stoic relationships aren't built on reaction or validation. They're built on presence, on power that doesn't need to be proven, on boundaries that don't need to be screamed, on self-worth that doesn't bend for convenience. You don't need to control the outcome anymore. You don't need to ask, will they chase me? Will they regret it? Will they miss me? Because those questions no longer run your life. What matters now is who you've become in the absence. What matters is the peace you feel when you no longer need their message to make or break your day. What matters is how deeply you've rooted into yourself, into your silence, into your purpose. You've stopped orbiting their world, and you've built your own. You are no longer the woman who waits to be chosen. You are the woman who chooses, who doesn't shrink for love, who doesn't pour into empty hands, who doesn't beg to be seen. You are the storm and the calm, the presence and the absence. You are the fire that no longer burns for others' comfort, but for your own light. And when they do come back, as they always do, you won't be waiting. You'll be watching, calm, clear, unshaken, because the old version of you that needed their attention no longer exists. Only power remains, quiet, stoic, unforgettable.